Happy Valentine's month, everybody. I'm the Sliders Review, and I'm here today to share with you some of my favorite Valentine's Day episodes from TV shows or even movies. Not everything is all lovey-dovey. Sometimes Valentine's Days deal with heartache and everything. So, some episodes will be romantic and lovey-dovey, while others will be very sad and heart-wrenching and stuff. But love is love. It doesn't always come with smiles and giggles and glee. So, I'm here today to talk to you about Community Season 2, Early 21st Century Romanticism. So Season 2 Community is my all-time favorite, and I think in my opinion, it is the best season. When it comes to Community, I really only like the first two seasons. I love the first two seasons. The third one's okay, but the third one is when it started to fall off the rails and stuff. After that, the show just isn't redeemable in my opinion. And it lasted for about 6 or 7 seasons, but I just couldn't get into those other seasons. And so with this episode, it's pretty hilarious because in this episode the audience, we already knew some things, but the study group themselves learn a couple of other things. They learn things about Jeff that they don't like, which causes the group to kind of momentarily split up. They learn Pierce is popping pills and everything. And they learn Britta is very desperate for attention. And so with all this, there's a couple of plot threads that's going on. Shirley, for some bizarre reason, is the only one who isn't really featured in this episode. She's featured very early in the beginning, and then she's featured very late at the end. But all between, everything in between, she's completely gone and disappeared. I don't know if she's ever, talked about her plans or not, but for whatever reason, she's just not in this episode. Another great thing about this episode is that it introduces Magnitude, the dude who always says pop pop to everything and nothing else. Although he does utter a few more phrases like hey, 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 and stuff like that. But he was just an extremely hilarious character who literally only said 2 words and that's it throughout the entire series. But what's interesting is that he's played by the dude who was in the first 2 Harry Potter movies, who used to always say, 50 points Gryffindor. And so seeing him here was just it's that dude. So basically what happens is that they do their normal study group thing early on in the beginning. And so they realize Pierce was popping pills and he's denying what exactly he's popping. And so Annie wants to do an intervention, but Jeff doesn't want to because Jeff just all about himself and could care less about anybody else. He happens to badmouth the bare naked ladies, which apparently everybody in his group is a fan of, and they're pissed that he doesn't like them. So he has decided, you know what, screw y'all, I'm not going to the Valentine's Day dance thing, I'm just gonna be at home. Before all this, Britta is she comes in and she starts to hug this woman. And so everybody's kind of looking at her kind of funny because the woman happens to look almost just like Britta. Long blonde hair, she's white, she's tall, and she's kind of like a hipster. Well, Troy's all your friend is cute. And so Britta's all oh, she wouldn't be interested in you, Troy. And so Annie determines, she must be a lesbian or something. So Britta's all yes, you can say that word, it's not sinful. And Britta's all I have a lesbian friend and I treat her like a normal person. Basically, it's Britta accepting her for who she is, but also wanting the attention from it. So everybody assumes Pierce is gonna make fun of her, but he actually doesn't. Well, to some degree, he doesn't. He actually has a bunch of prepared letters for her that are all dingy and brown. And there's at least four of them. And he reads front and back all of them, but we don't get to hear it until the end when he says bon appetit. And so it turns out that it was actually somewhat like a couple of paragraphs of that was actually encourageable. And so he's all like, wait until like, I get to you, Jeffrey, and stuff. Because he used to always assume Jeff was gay. Now, apparently behind the scenes, like one of the stage people, the crew members wrote that, and it actually was a very encouraging, like 4 pages and stuff. So basically, when the group's all splitting up, Chang decided he's going to infringe himself on Jeff. Basically, Chang got kicked out of his house once he kissed and had that affair with Shirley because they did it in the bathroom, and so he needs a place to stay. But he doesn't let Jeff know that. Instead, he thinks he's just there to hang out with the counselor dude and Jeff. The counselor dude infringed his rights on Jeff because he knows he has a big screen TV and he wants to watch the soccer game. But of course, they call it football from where he's at. So, and everything, when they're over there, some hijinks happen. Chain like breaks his like lamp with a nunchuck and everything. And so Chain has decided, you know what? I'm gonna throw a party and everything. Jeff does not know that. So he calls up Starburns and everything, and the party is set. Jeff is pissed once he sees all these people hanging out at the party, and this is when we get introduced to Magnitude. But before we get to him, the dude who plays Leonard, may he rest in peace. He comes in the door talking about where the white women at, and Jeff's all like, "There are no white women here." Oh, the comedy used to be on point in this back in the day. And so, Magnitude comes all in. He's like, hey, 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 pop, pop. And so, like, Jeff is kind of surprised that he's never seen Magnitude before. And that's because it's the second season and, we're halfway into the second season. And so, like, at some point in time, he realizes what Chang did, and he's furious, but he feels bad for Chang. So he kicks him out anyway. And because how he found out was that, somebody's all like, hey, well, what was it? He was talking to Chang, and Chang was washing dishes, and then next thing you know, he was all like, you can just use the dishwasher. But Chang did not want him to open it up because his clothes are in there washing, and his blanket is in the oven drying. But you are never supposed to do that, by the way. And so somebody's all like, so he started to plead with him about how he got kicked out. Jeff was about to come around until somebody's all like, we found 4 hermit crabs in your bathroom. So he kicks him out. But then when he decided to kick everybody out at the party, it's funny because everybody that leaves, Jeff is calling them all by like different interesting and unique names like P Swizzle and stuff like that. Apparently all these names were the original name of Magnitude, but the creator couldn't decide on one until they settled with Magnitude. That is a cool name, Magnitude, man. Can you imagine being named that? And so, like, when he's throwing away his stuff in the laundry, no, the trash chute, because he lives in an apartment, he hears Chang in like the trash. So he feels terrible for him and let him stay. And so at some point in time, the counselor dude talks about how he's lonely and everything. Because Jeff's talking about, I don't need my study group, blah, blah, blah. And because they need me. But nobody left him any messages. He's always checking his cell phone. And so the counselor dude realized that he's a lonely man. That's why he infringed his rights on Jeff. And so Jeff decides to call up the study group and apologize towards the end. And they had to do something about Pierce. Now, as for everybody else, Troy and Abed, they see a hot librarian at their school and they want to date her. So they start kind of staring at her, pretending like they're asleep, and then yelling out the name Book so she'll look at them. Now, she's a very attractive woman. And so, they both ask her out, but she's all she can't decide. So they take her to, the dance. It's there. Abed talks for 2 hours about the Saw movies, but she's not into all that nerdy stuff, so she's into Troy. Troy, however, is upset that she didn't pick Abed, even though she picked him, idiot. And so, like, when he finds out that she thinks he's a dork, he dumps her as hot as she is and talking about, I hate her, I hate her, I hate her. Because Troy is a big man child who's like in love with Abed but does not date him. Basically, it's like the ultimate bromance. And Troy follows him around like a puppy doing everything that Abed does. Which is interesting because Troy wasn't like that in the first couple of episodes of the first season. Troy was a very much different character until he started being friends with Abed. Then he started to copy everything Abed does, which is something I never liked, but it worked for the show. And so, like, with Pierce, he is still popping pills, but he's hallucinating to where he sees a tiny Andy Dick. Ugh, Andy Dick. That dude is problematic. I think I don't know if he's in jail or not, but he should be. Anyway, he's had too many chances. So anyway, he's hallucinating on that, and that's his story arc. As for Britta, she, of course, invited her friend to like the party, and Annie is there. Annie's like, a good little girl who's never really done much. And so when Britta and the girl are talking and hugging, the girl's friend, not girlfriend, but her friend, like comes over to talk to Annie, and they're both like, "Oh, I'm not lesbian," and they're like, "Well, neither am I," and they're all like, "Oh, okay, good," because like Britta is just hanging out with what's her name because she thinks she's a lesbian. But turns out the other girl is not a lesbian. She's only hanging out with Britta because she thinks Britta's a lesbian and they think it would be cool to have like a lesbian friend. I don't know how this show have aged, but this episode, but like yeah, the LGBT probably aren't too keen to this episode, probably. Because it's kind of like people just using them just to be friends to get like brownie points and stuff. So at some point in time, they decide to dance because they are like nothing wrong with two women dancing, but they still don't know that neither one's not a lesbian. So somebody's all like, y'all should kiss. So no, they decide they should kiss to make everybody look. And so they do, but it's a very awkward kiss. And then they're both like, well, we've never done this before. So they find out they're both not lesbians, they're mad at each other, and they're no longer friends. So that's basically this romantic, like, Valentine's Day dance episode. It's pretty hilarious and stuff. Like, you should really check this out. Now, wasn't that romantic? Or depressing, depending on what kind of video I just talked about. Okay, well, happy Valentine's Day, everybody. And bye.